Okay, so welcome back to the deep dive. And, today we're diving into something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and that's making that very first $10,000.
Yeah, that very first $10,000 is a big hurdle for a lot of people. And
When we've been looking at all these different
it's kind of like that mental hurdle.
these people who go from zero to millionaire,
Absolutely.
there's no magic formula or anything.
What we found in this particular story is this idea that like hitting that first $10,000, it proves something to you. It proves that you can actually generate income, and that's such a pivotal moment in someone's journey to wealth and success.
Yeah, it's such a powerful concept because it's the proof of concept. Like
Yeah.
you can have all these ideas that you can read all these books, but until you've actually gone out there and done it and made that first, $10,000, it's just an idea. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's the difference between like theoretical knowledge and practical application.
Exactly.
And that's where the real magic happens.
Yeah, and I think that's really what this deep dive is for you listening, right? Because we know you want to get this information in a really concise way without having to go and read a whole book or, watch hours and hours of content, And our mission is to extract those actionable insights. So, today we're going to be looking specifically at how to realistically approach making that first $10,000.
And what's really fascinating is that this particular source, they kind of distilled it down into 4 core options for generating income.
Yeah.
And it really simplifies things.
And I think the source is great because they also, talk about some of the pitfalls that you need to avoid. And one of those things is this idea of getting too complicated too quickly.
Right. Overcomplicated.
Everyone wants to jump into, the crypto or the, day trading or whatever's hot at the moment. And,
Especially when you're starting from zero, it's so tempting to kind of chase the shiny object syndrome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The latest trend or the thing that everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
But what this source argues is that those ventures, those approaches are much more effective when you already have some capital to work with.
Right.
It's more about multiplying existing wealth rather than generating that first 10,000.
Yeah, and it's like you need the seeds before you can grow the giant tree.
Absolutely.
And so what they talk about is focusing on these 3 core criteria for your initial income generation strategy.
Right.
The first one is it should require very little, if any, money to get started.
Little to no upfront costs.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The second is that it should generate consistent cash flow.
Consistent revenue streams.
Right. And the third is it needs to have the potential to scale.
Scalability. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think those are really smart guidelines because, they really force you to think practically about like what you can do right now with the resources you have.
In the present moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So keeping those in mind, they talk about these 4 core options. So the first one might seem really straightforward, and that's selling in-person services. And they give examples like personal training delivery, driving dog walking, doing nails, barbering, even videography.
Right.
Anything that you could do in person.
And what's really interesting about this category is that the barrier to entry is often very low.
Yeah.
You may already have a skill that you can monetize, or you can quickly learn a new skill.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that you can start earning income almost immediately.
Yeah. And it's kind of a confidence booster too.
Yeah.
Because you see those immediate results.
Yeah.
And you start to realize like, oh, I can actually make money from this.
Yeah, you get that quick feedback loop and it builds momentum.
Yeah, exactly. And the source even gives an example of the author. As a teenager, they went around to wealthy neighborhoods and offered to wash cars.
I love that.
And, their thinking was that if people had really nice, well-kept gardens, but dirty cars, those people probably cared about appearances, and they would be willing to pay to have a clean car as well.
That's such a clever observation, right? It's like reading the signals that people are putting out there and finding a need that aligns with that.
Yeah, and it's like a really practical, on-the-ground approach.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so appealing about this whole category is that it's very tangible.
It is, yeah.
But they also point out that there are some downsides. The demand can fluctuate, and your income is very much tied to the hours that you put in.
Right.
So it can be challenging to scale it.
Yeah, it's trading time for money, essentially, which is a limitation.
Exactly. So the second option is selling local products. So this would be things like, homemade baked goods, handcrafted items, artwork, fresh produce,
Yeah.
anything that you can
Right.
create and sell locally.
The tangible goods, yeah.
Yeah, and the source even gives an example of, they use the money they earned from washing cars to buy parts to build model airplanes.
I love that.
And then they would sell those model airplanes at the local RC flying club.
That's awesome.
So it's kind of like that entrepreneurial spirit of like creating something and then finding a market for it.
Yeah, it's that hustle mentality, right?
Yeah.
You see a need, you fulfill it.
But they also point out some challenges with this approach.
Yeah.
The cost of materials can eat into your profits.
Sure.
And your customer base is limited by your location.
Right. Yeah, your reach is confined.
And so, your profit margins can be lower for the time and effort that you put in.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that unless it's something you're truly passionate about, it might not be the most fulfilling way to spend your time if you're just chasing that first 10,000.
Yeah, you got to love it.
Yeah.
If you're going to be spending all that time on it.
Absolutely.
So option number 3 is selling global products. So now we're talking about starting an online clothing brand, drop shipping, reselling limited edition sneakers, print-on-demand services, any that you can sell to a global market.
Right.
And the big advantage here is pretty clear, right?
Oh, yeah. You're no longer limited by geography.
Exactly.
You have access to a potentially massive customer base.
Yeah, and the source even talks about how they traveled to China to manufacture model airplanes on a larger scale, just to illustrate that, that ambition to reach a wider audience.
Right. And now with the rise of platforms that facilitate drop shipping and print on demand, that global reach is even more accessible than ever. It's incredible.
But they also mention a pretty significant hurdle, and that's the need to reinvest profits back into inventory. So they talk about it as being kind of this cycle.
Yeah.
You sell some, you have to buy more to fulfill future orders.
Yeah.
So while the potential for passive income and scalability is there,
Sure.
your initial earnings might be pretty modest.
Yeah, that initial reinvestment phase is a key consideration.
Yeah.
It's a trade-off between taking home more personal income immediately versus building a larger, more automated business in the future.
Yeah, it's a long-term vision,
Right. It requires patience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, which brings us to option number 4. And this is the one that the source really emphasizes as being particularly powerful in today's world, and that's selling online services.
Right.
And they even acknowledge that this wasn't really as available or viable when they were first starting out.
Right. Back in the day.
Yeah.
But now it's like a huge opportunity.
Yeah. And what's great about this is it combines some of the best aspects of the other approaches. So you have that potential for global reach. Sure. Like selling products globally.
Yep.
But you also have much higher profit margins, more similar to in-person services.
Right, because you're not dealing with the physical inventory and the shipping and all those costs associated with that.
Exactly. And they mentioned that, while selling physical products might typically yield a 20 to 30% profit margin.
Right.
Online services can often be in the 70 to 80% range.
Yeah. That's a significant difference.
And from the start.
Yeah.
You know?
Right off the bat.
So it's pretty powerful.
It is.
And the examples they give are things like, copywriting, video editing, creating thumbnails for videos, running online ads, managing social media accounts. These are all skills that are in high demand, and they can be done from anywhere.
Right. All you need is a laptop and an internet connection.
Exactly.
And you're good to go.
So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, selling online services sounds like it could be a good fit for me, but how do I figure out what service I could offer?
Right.
They actually give you these 3 really helpful self-assessment questions.
Yeah.
So the first one is, what are you already good at?
What are your strengths?
Yeah, exactly. The second one is, what do you genuinely enjoy learning about?
What are you passionate about? What are you curious about?
Yeah. And then the third is, what are some common problems that businesses consistently face?
What are the pain points that businesses are experiencing?
Right. And the sweet spot is really where those 3 circles overlap.
Absolutely. It's about finding that intersection of your abilities, your interests, and what the market actually needs.
Yeah. And they give this really crucial advice, and that's don't wait for perfection before you start.
Right. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good.
Yeah.
You know?
Because it's so easy to get stuck in that cycle of like, I need to learn more. I need to be better before I can actually go out there and offer my services. But
you never feel ready.
You'll never feel ready. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the advice is to just take action now, even if it means setting your prices a little lower initially, just to get that experience.
Right. It's about earning as you learn,
Yeah.
getting real-world experience, and building your portfolio.
And building that confidence too.
Absolutely.
So now once you've identified that online service you want to offer, how do you actually scale it and start moving toward that $10,000 goal?
Right.
And they introduced this concept called the skill pyramid, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, it's a great framework.
And it has 4 components. So the first one is positioning.
Positioning. Okay.
And this is all about shifting your mindset from just completing individual tasks to understanding and solving significant business problems.
So it's not just about the technical skills themselves,
Right.
but it's about the value that you bring to the table.
Yeah, it's about the outcome.
The outcome, right.
And they give these really concrete, don't be this, be that examples.
I love those.
So instead of just thinking of yourself as a YouTube video editor,
Right.
position yourself as a content partner for entrepreneurs who are selling products through their videos.
Right. You're not just editing videos.
Right.
You're helping them grow their business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And instead of just creating random thumbnails, aim to become the go-to visual designer for a successful online creator.
Right. You're elevating their brand
Yeah.
through your visuals.
And instead of just writing blog articles, focus on crafting compelling landing pages that convert visitors into customers.
Right. You're driving results
Exactly.
through your writing.
So it's really about taking those skills you have or the ones you're developing and applying them in a more strategic way.
Right. It's about being strategic and intentional with your skill set.
Yeah.
And targeting clients who not only need your skills, but also have the budget to pay for them.
Exactly. So the second element of the skill pyramid is leverage.
Leverage. Okay.
And this is all about making a fundamental shift in how you charge for your services, moving away from simply trading your time for money.
Right. Breaking free from the hourly rate model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're running Facebook ads, instead of billing by the hour,
Yeah.
you might charge based on the number of leads you generate or the conversions you drive for the business.
Right. You're aligning your incentives with their desired outcomes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're managing someone's social media presence, you demonstrate your value by showing how your work is increasing engagement, driving traffic to their website,
Right.
or ultimately leading to more sales.
Right. It's all about demonstrating the return on investment
Yes.
that you're providing.
So it's really about shifting the focus from your input, the number of hours you work,
Right.
to their output, the concrete measurable results.
Tangible results. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where the real earning potential lies.
Exactly. So the third part of the skill pyramid is reach.
Reach. Okay.
This is all about shifting from constantly having to go out and find new clients to building a system where potential clients are attracted to you.
Okay. So it's about becoming a magnet
Yeah.
for the right clients.
And they give this great real-world example of how they were looking for someone to design a poster,
Right.
and they stumbled upon this person on TikTok who was creating these incredible designs, but wasn't even trying to monetize their work.
Yeah. Wow.
And simply by sharing their work online, they were gaining visibility and naturally attracting opportunities.
Yeah. That's the power of content marketing.
Exactly.
You know, putting your work out there and letting it speak for itself.
So the advice here is really clear. Consistently post examples of your work, share a bit about your process, showcase the results you've achieved. You know, those before and after examples, growth metrics, engagement numbers, it all becomes your living portfolio.
Right. It's like a digital resume that's
Well-
constantly working for you.
And then the final element of the skill pyramid is automation.
Automation. Okay.
And this might sound technical, but at its core, it's really about being incredibly organized and professional in your business operations.
Right. It's about streamlining your processes.
Yeah, and they make this really important point that a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs don't succeed not because they lack the skills, but because they lack organization.
Yeah, I think that's often overlooked. You know,
they miss deadlines, they forget to follow up with potential clients, there's poor communication.
Yeah.
All these things lead to losing clients and hindering growth.
absolutely. It's the unglamorous side of entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
but it's absolutely crucial.
So the emphasis here is on being reliable, professional, and consistent.
Right. Being that dependable go-to person.
Yeah, and they recommend leveraging tools to help you stay organized. They even specifically mention Odoo CRM as an example.
Yeah. A good CRM system can be a lifesaver.
And yes, CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. And these tools help you keep track of your clients' conversations, set reminders for deadlines, and get a clear overview of your income pipeline.
Yeah, it's about having all your ducks in a row. So
Exactly.
you can focus on the high level stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people overlook, especially when they're starting out.
Absolutely.
So we spent a lot of time talking about the strategies for reaching that first $10,000.
Right.
But the source also gives this really valuable glimpse into what comes next.
Okay.
How to take that initial capital and start building wealth beyond just spending what you earn.
Right. So it's not just about making money.
Yeah.
It's about keeping it and growing it.
Exactly. And they make this really important distinction between being rich, which often implies a focus on consumption,
Right.
and being wealthy, where the focus is on strategically multiplying your money.
Yeah, it's about building assets,
Yeah.
not just accumulating possessions.
Exactly. And so they outline these 4 key categories for investing your money, ranging from the most conservative to the more speculative.
Mm.
So first up is a high-interest savings account.
Okay.
And while the example they give of a 3% return might not sound incredibly exciting, it's presented as an essential foundation,
Sure.
a safe place to keep your readily accessible funds.
Yeah, it's your financial safety net.
Exactly. And the primary purpose here is to have an emergency fund so that you're not forced to sell your long-term investments at a loss if unexpected expenses arise.
Right. It's about protecting your downside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So next up are index funds, and these are described as a relatively low maintenance way to participate in long-term market growth.
Okay. Yeah, index funds are a great way to passively grow your wealth.
Yeah, and they even give this really relatable analogy of consistently skipping that daily $5 coffee
Mm-hmm.
and investing that amount instead,
I love that.
and how over the long run, that could potentially lead to $1 million retirement.
Yeah, it's the power of compounding.
Yeah.
Small, consistent actions over time
It is.
can lead to huge results.
And then we move into the realm of individual stocks,
Yeah.
which are presented as more exciting, but also carrying a higher level of risk.
Sure. Yeah, individual stocks are more of a hands-on approach.
Yeah.
You need to do your research. You need
Sure.
to understand the companies that you're investing in.
Yeah, and they frame it as a valuable opportunity to learn more about financial markets and individual businesses.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn about the world of finance and,
Yeah.
and how businesses operate.
But the key advice is to start small and to educate yourself.
Right. Don't go all in.
Yeah.
Start small. Learn as you go.
And then finally, the 4th category is cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency.
And the author mentions their own entry into the crypto market around 2019.
Right.
But they really emphasize that this is a high-risk asset class.
Yeah, it's the wild west of investing.
Yeah.
It can be very volatile.
And the advice is to consider using a strategy like dollar cost averaging,
Oh, okay.
which involves investing a fixed amount at regular intervals, regardless of the price.
Right. So you're not trying to time the market.
You
You're
said-
just consistently investing.
Yeah, and they also say to do your research before investing in any specific coins.
Due diligence is crucial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to only invest what you can afford to lose.
Absolutely. Never invest more than you can comfortably lose.
So to bring it all together, the core takeaway from this deep dive is to really focus your initial efforts on generating that first $10,000 strategically by exploring these 4 options. And they really emphasize the potential of selling online services.
Yeah, it's a really powerful option in today's digital landscape.
Exactly. And then once you've made that $10,000, to think about applying those principles of the skill pyramid
Right.
to help you scale and move toward your financial goal.
Yeah, those principles are really valuable for building a sustainable business.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that achieving that $10,000 isn't just about the money itself.
Right.
It's about proving to yourself that you have a valuable skill.
It's about building confidence
Yes.
and believing in your ability to generate income.
And it's about recognizing that you have control over your financial future.
Absolutely. It's empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the final thought from this source, which is this distinction between those who are rich and those who are wealthy. And they really encourage you to think about which path you're on,
Yeah.
because the rich tend to focus on spending.
Consumption.
Yeah. And the wealthy prioritize multiplying their assets.
Building wealth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how can you use this initial $10,000 as a stepping stone
Right.
to build that lasting wealth?
It's the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about as you move forward on your own financial journey.
Absolutely. Food for thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.